everybody. Welcome to the session on conquering your operating cadence, part of the Sales Enablement Soiree. My name is Maggie Callahan. I am the Director of Revenue Enablement at Conversant. We are an ethics and compliance software company, and I am a maniacal freak about operating cadences. So I'm really excited to be here speaking with you all today. If you are in attendance, I'd imagine that your life looks a little something like this. I know, it gives me agita just looking at it. And so what I'd imagine you're probably thinking is, I need to figure out first and foremost how to make sure I'm optimizing the meetings that I'm in because I don't have that much extra time. Or the second is, I tend to sit in meetings all week and nothing happens. So how can I make sure that I am effectively coaching as a sales leader and ensuring that something is actually coming out of the meetings that I'm having? It's one of the most frustrating things for any of us sales leaders in the trade. So what are we going to talk about today? We are going to talk early on about how we actually define an operating cadence. What does it mean to each of us, and how do we think about it today versus how might we think about it when we leave this approximately 30-minute session? The second piece that we're going to talk through is what are the common meetings that really should be existent in your operating cadence in order to ensure that your entire team and you as a leader are reaching the goals and managing the success that you want to manage, managing to the success you want to manage. The third piece that we're going to talk about is how do you prioritize your operating cadence and set the proper intentions, not only for yourself and your fellow leaders, but also for your individual contributors, for your team members, making sure that there is buy-in and that they are a part of the creation of the operating cadence process. And then finally, sales coaching. How do we bake this in to how we can optimize our sales coaching time? If you are a small organization or a leader in a small organization listening to this, you may be thinking to yourself, my operating cadence consists basically of having to micromanage opportunities or sell on my own because my team is small and I don't have the opportunity to actually coach my people. That's really common, and we're going to talk about some open-ended questions that you can leverage leaving this meeting to optimize the time that you have with your team and make it feel like you actually can coach again. If you are a sales leader for a large organization and you have the time to coach your team, one of the things that tends to happen is we consolidate all of our operating cadence meetings so that our forecast meeting sometimes turns into a pipeline meeting or turns into a territory meeting. So we're going to talk about how you can stay on track with the sessions that you have allotted for your team members. And then of course, we have to close it out with how in the world can you learn more? If you like this session and you want to learn more about how you can optimize your operating cadence, we'll talk about that as well. First and foremost, I like to start every single one of my sessions with sales leaders with a quote by John Buchan. John Buchan was a historian and politician in Canada, a Scottish politician in Canada in 1935, and he said this: the task of leadership is not to put greatness into people, but to elicit it, for greatness is there already. I start every leadership coaching session with this quote and actually got printouts of it and put them in frames for all of the sales leaders at Conversant, because it is so easy to think that as sales leaders, it is our responsibility to inflict our greatness, our successes into our people. And we can sometimes go off the deep end thinking that if I've been successful with sales or with a specific aspect of my career, that then I'm going to be fantastic at coaching it. I'm here to ruin your dream of that, unfortunately. Just because we are fantastic individual contributors doesn't necessarily mean that we have everything down to coach our teams effectively. That's why we're here to talk about it today. The second piece is Just because one of your reps may not be performing to the degree you are expecting them to perform, it doesn't mean that they're not necessarily great. It might mean that we're pushing them in a way that is not meant for them. Their greatness is there somewhere, and your responsibility as a coach and as a leader is to help them find it and help them completely soar to whatever level of success they want to accomplish and achieve. So as we go through this today, and as you proceed after this session into your day-to-day operations, I want you to remember, I want you to take away, if anything, that everybody has some greatness in them. It's not our responsibility to put it into them. It's our responsibility to elicit it from them. Okay, so let's talk about what an operating cadence actually is. When looking this up, because I always try to define what I'm speaking about beforehand, I found what I feel is a pretty solid definition from Dave Williams of the Chameleon Collective. And he says that the operating cadence is first and foremost the rhythm and the pace at which work is done and organized, usually on your teams. It's a big part of company culture and can either exude your company culture, so express your company culture, or become a detriment to your company culture. But it isn't usually an explicit focus unless it is broken. What he's saying there is that people don't necessarily talk about the operating cadence until they realize that the operating cadence is not being done well. So we tend to not be proactive about what we need from the sessions that we run on a weekly basis, usually, depending on if that's our rhythm, until we recognize that those sessions are not really having the outcome that we want them to have. Those might include poorly run meetings, too many redundant processes, frustrations, time management, etc., etc. So when we define our operating cadence, we want to be hyper-focused on, first and foremost, how often are we meeting? What's the rhythm? And are we at the right pace? Is this how frequently we should be meeting? Or does this topic of conversation require more frequent sessions, less frequent sessions? And are we defining what the purpose and intention is? So if you are a leader of a sales team today, you are probably thinking to yourself, all right, I have a pretty good operating cadence. You probably include one of these 5 sessions within your operating cadence. We have forecast meetings. What's coming in, what's not coming in, what's committed, what's best case, what's pipeline. We have our one-on-one sessions, one-on-one time so that we can work with through professional development with our individual contributors. We may have pipeline or lead meetings. What's in our pipeline? How are we managing our pipeline? How are we nurturing our pipeline? Where's our pipeline coming from? We have our team meetings, our larger group, rather than just the one-on-one, to share information, bring in people from other areas of the company. And then we, of course, have our opportunity reviews, specific deals, deal strategy. Maybe you follow BANT, maybe you follow MEDPIC, and how are those opportunities being executed upon by your team members? You may be looking at this list of 5 and thinking to yourself, yeah, we have all 5 of those. That's great. Are they going well? I want you to ask yourself that question first. Do you feel like all 5 of your sessions, you get out exactly what you want to get done, and your conversion percentages, your pipeline maintenance, your average sales price, your close rates are continuously increasing or decreasing depending on what's positive? That would be the first question I ask. The second piece is, some of you might be looking at this list of 5 and saying, how in the world are any of those different from one another, outside of maybe team meetings and one-on-ones? I do all of my forecasting, pipeline, leads, and opportunity reviews in my one-on-one. That's really common, and I'm here to talk to you about why it is so important to separate these out, not so that you can add more operating cadence meetings to your calendar every week, but so you can accomplish whatever are the largest priorities for your sales organization right now. Usually when I talk about this first, I talk about making sure you're conscious of the 4 key areas that will make the largest difference for your sales coaching. These 4 key areas to effective leadership cadences are as follows. First, your opportunities. How many opportunities do you have? This is the lifeblood of your sales organization. We all know this. I don't have to tell any of you that are on the phone today. The more opportunities that you have, the more that you have in pipeline, the more opportunities you have to close. So what is the composition of your opportunities? Are they high ARR? Are they low ARR? And why might that be happening? How are you continuing to hit your pipeline targets? What pipeline target do you even have to hit based on your close percentage? If you're closing only 25% of opportunities in your pipeline, you're going to need 4x pipeline. So how are you thinking about the opportunities that are existent in your pipe? The second is pace. How are your opportunities moving through every single stage of your stage advancement criteria? How are your reps and your leaders spending their extra time during the week? What are you doing to ensure that the opportunities that are in pipeline are getting the attention that they need and that they are forecasted accurately? Are they in best case? Are they in pipeline? Are they in commit? Or whatever it is that you put as your nomenclature vernacular on your stage advancement. The third piece is your deal strategy. So are you currently leveraging a specific sales methodology, and are all of your people, your individual contributors, following that? If so, can they play back a deal strategy to you in relation to MedPick, in relation to BANT, in relation to the challenger sale, in relation to spin selling, in relation to value-based selling? Based on that, do they have multi-threaded opportunities? Are they speaking to enough people? Have they mapped out their buyer landscape potentially? Have they identified effective next steps, not only on their side of the house, but on the customer side of the house? Is it mutual? Have they agreed upon paperwork? So those aspects of your deal strategy are going to be really tangible in relation to whatever sales methodology your organization follows. And finally, at scale, can they optimize all of the opportunities that they have and run similar plays, or the plays that they know they need to run at the right time, in the right opportunities, and ask for help in the right ways? Are they sharing with their team members best practices? Are there great stories of successes and failures so that the larger organization gets to learn from one another? Now, you may be looking at this list of 4 key effective operating or leadership cadences and thinking to yourself, well, where do I even start? Because I recognize that I have all 4 of these. I need to include all 4 of these aspects into my operating cadence, but I am having issues with everything from pipeline maintenance to negotiation tactics way later in an opportunity. So where in the funnel do you start with your coaching? Here's my suggestion, my piece of advice from enablement to all of you as sales leaders. Always look towards the areas that are going to have the most effect, or if you pull that lever, everything else can begin to waterfall. For Conversant, initially, that was really, how do we manage our pipeline? How do we see what pipeline is coming in from our business development team? Are our sales reps prospecting on their own? Do we have 4x, 3x, 2x coverage? Are we handling our pipeline nurture? Do we have a pipeline nurture strategy? And from there, we will have, when we understand that, we will have a better insight into what then gets moved or converted into our stage 1 opportunities, which we can then track conversion percentages. Should our conversion percentages have been low? We can track how many buyers our reps have in an opportunity. So we could really pull that lever of pipeline maintenance and pipeline strategy, and that would help us to then waterfall all of the rest of the aspects of our operating cadence in conjunction with that first lever that we've pulled. How might this look for you? When we think about our operating cadence, we want to think about it in two ways. We first want to think, what do we need to do independently with one-on-one with our team members? But then also, what do we want to do as a team? What do we want to do with more than just a one-on-one session, team meetings? And so if we start to, again, waterfall our opportunities, pace, deal strategy, and at scale into specific meetings, we start to actually cut it up and it starts to become bite-size. So do we have enough opportunities? Where this tends to play the largest role, like I just mentioned, is in our pipeline health. And when we define pipeline health, that usually is composed of two areas. First and foremost, do we have enough deals in play, period? Are we getting enough at-bats from our business development team? Are they quality? Are there only quantity? How are we qualifying them once we are in pipeline? And how are we moving them through? The second is, what are the composition of these deals? I heard an amazing analogy that I love to use now around composition of deals called whale, tuna, and guppy. So are you a rep that has a majority of guppies in your pipeline? Those deals that, depending on your ARR or your average deal size, are less than $5,000? Do you have more of the tunas that are in between, say, the $10,000 and $25,000 range? Or do you have the whales that are over 100 grand? If you hit one of them, you could potentially hit your quota for the year, or excuse me, for the quarter. And where are you spending your time based on the composition of those opportunities? This then waterfalls into the rest of the four key areas of our operating cadence strategy. Second being pace. What's our forecast accuracy? So do we have good forecast health? Are we moving opportunities through their stage advancement criteria in the expected dates that we expect of our team, just based on our general average sales cycle? And what are the trends that we're seeing with forecast accuracy based on our commitments and best cases for our team? Do we have people that are sandbagging? Do we have people that are committing more than they know that they can get in because they're just trying to commit their number? That's really common as well. With a deal strategy, so we want to, of course, ensure that we have some type of one-on-one session with our team members to give them true independent coaching. But then also, if you don't have the time to do that, incorporate this into a team meeting. How can your team members build off of one another and build strategies together based on all of their experiences? Are we sending the right message to our prospects? Are we identifying the right buyers as we're trying to multi-thread? Do we have the right differentiation for the competition that's involved in this opportunity? Are we identifying the decision criteria and decision process early on, or are we forgetting? How are we pricing this deal strategy? Then we go into team health. And team health really helps us to identify not only best practices, but it offers a great opportunity to develop new skills around all of the other areas of the operating cadence. When I bake this out, I bake it out in separate sessions that either occur once every other week or monthly. This will really help you to, first of all, cut back on unnecessary meetings that you may be currently having weekly. But then secondarily, it helps you to really understand what you're going into your leadership forecast meetings or your leadership pipeline meetings with, because they are happening frequently enough. You'll see here, I won't read through all of it, but the suggestions for how often should you be having pipeline meetings, and how often should these be solely pipeline meetings, not pipeline and territory meetings, not pipeline and forecast meetings, not pipeline and deal strategy meetings, but true pipeline meetings, as opposed to forecast meetings. Again, not forecast and pipeline meetings, not forecast and territory meetings, not forecast and medpick meetings or deal strategy meetings, true sole forecast meetings. And again, if you don't have the time because you are strapped and you are a small team and you don't really have the access to coaching all the time for your team members, use your team members as assistants to help you coach. Get learning by osmosis. So do team forecast, team pipeline sharing, so that you can continuously share best practices. Okay, I just mentioned that we at Conversant started this all off with our pipeline health. So we wanted to figure out how in the world were we going to ensure that we had the right pipeline and we were managing our pipeline effectively. We had to start all of that with helping our leaders understand what coaching looked like and what it didn't look like. I'm going to highlight this quickly and bring us back around to our quote by John Buchan that we can't force greatness into anybody, but we can elicit greatness, for it's already there. And so really quickly, as we go into how do we lead through these aspects of our operating cadence, we want to make sure that we are checking ourselves as sales leaders, and one, not micromanaging, not taking over the sale or saying, I can help you with all of these specific areas, rather than observing your sales reps in action and ensuring that they can play back a strategy for you. What I see so frequently with sales leaders is that they'll close meetings by saying, here's what I think that you should go and do. Next time, come back to me and tell me that you did it. Rather than saying, walk me through what we just spoke about and tell me what you are going to do. Putting it on them and asking discovery questions about their preparation, what they're taking away from this, what they're agreeing to go and execute upon, is going to be significantly more impactful than telling them, taking over, setting targets that are really specific rather than mutually agreeing on behaviors, because this is where we start to get to change management. We focus on the future rather than focusing on the past. So you've done these things wrong a million times. We focus on how they're going to change into the future, and we allow them to play a huge role in deciding how they are going to move forward. Again, we're eliciting the greatness out of them. We have to get buy-in from them. All right, so based on that, how do we even start to define a pipeline meeting? First and foremost, you want to make sure that as you are defining these separate stages of your operating cadence, that you do three things. The first, always make sure that you have a purpose for why you are running this meeting. If you do not have a good purpose statement or intention of what the outcomes are, I can promise you that this meeting will get eaten up by something completely different, and you won't end up focusing on your largest areas of opportunity that will enable your team's success. On top of that, if your sales reps don't have something to prepare for or understand what the purpose is for them, it can lead to what's called seller deficit disorder that force management talks about. Hey, Mr. or Mrs. Leader, I don't know why you're asking me for all this information because you don't use it. And that is so negative for how your reps then view you as an effective coach or leader. So we always want to make sure that we're defining a purpose. Here's an example of our purpose statement for pipeline. We want to understand the current pipeline and timeframes of pipeline, discuss our lead strategy, decrease our opportunity cycle between our stage 1 and stage 2 opportunities. So how can we get more into our lead funnel and then into our early stages of our opportunities? The second thing to do is ensure that you've organized your primary focus of who's owning the meeting and what do you expect of them owning the meeting. You can see here that for us, our pipeline meetings are run entirely by our sales reps. They lead the conversation, they come into the conversation, and they bring all of the relevant information in relation to outstanding leads and strategies to movement into pipeline, their increasing pipeline to quota ratio, their early sales cycle opportunities and how they plan on getting them through the funnel, their BDR strategies. So they are responsible for bringing all of that to the table. And finally, the third piece that is extremely important as you're starting to define your operating cadence for specific meetings is, what are the outcomes you are expecting? The outcomes that we have been expecting, that we do expect, are that our seller understands how they can evaluate the composition of their pipeline. Can I look at my pipeline strategy and say, hey, I'm working on way too many guppies right now and it's taking up so much time. Do I have the permission, because that tends to happen often, do I have the permission to set aside these opportunities that may not be playing as large of a role in me hitting my quota and therefore the team hitting our quota, and focus more on these tuna and these whale opportunities? Not only that, but the seller should always leave these meetings with a plan of action that they can go and execute upon. Let's talk about what this looks like when we break it down even further. We set the sales and sales leader expectations specifically, and we share this with them as if it is a sales meeting. One great lesson I have learned about change management for all of you sales leaders out there who are struggling is if you can relate whatever activity you are trying to change the behavior of to an activity that your people already understand inherently, for example, the sales motion, hopefully they understand that inherently, you will have a significantly higher likelihood of true change management and progression of whatever opportunity you're trying to face. For example, for us, when we set the expectations of our sales reps coming prepared to the meeting, we look at it as the sales rep runs this meeting and the leader is the actual customer. The leader is being sold to, essentially. And that being said, the sales rep better come with the collateral that's necessary for the sales leader to be educated on the process. And the sales leader better know their stuff, their territory, their current pipeline numbers, how many opportunities are put in nurture, and what are they doing for how long have they been in nurture, what's happening to them once they've been in nurture for 60 days and they need to fall out, and how are they working with the BDR? So how are they using other folks within the organization to help them get to their pipeline numbers? The sales leader, on the other hand, when we talk about coaching, has to have some different parameters. The sales leader is the customer in this meeting. So of course, first and foremost, the sales leader has to be able to sit back and listen actively as the rep defines their numbers. The more that we try to cut people off in the middle of these sessions, unless they are going down a rabbit hole that's not relevant to the meeting, the more that we try to cut them off, the less they will believe that this meeting is theirs and that they own their future. The more they will believe that you are trying to micromanage their pipeline, to this specific example. So you have to be willing and ready to allow the sales rep to kick off these meetings, to patiently listen and take diligent notes on whatever it is that they're saying. Because when you close out this meeting, you want to make sure that your sales rep has something to go and act upon. One of the last pieces is that begin every single meeting that you have in your operating cadence, recapping the areas of opportunity from previous sessions. For example, if our pipeline meetings are every first and third week of the month, at the end of my first pipeline meeting, I am asking my rep, all right, Maggie, walk me through the areas that you are going to focus on for your pipeline health before week 3. And I'm going to ask Maggie to run me through a mutual action plan of what she's expecting to do and what she needs help with. I'm going to kick off meeting 3 with, all right, Maggie, you told me that you were going to go and execute upon this number of areas of opportunity within your pipeline. Talk to me about how it's going, and then let's get into the numbers. Everything has to come back around to whatever it is you spoke about before, or else the sales rep will believe that you are not doing anything with the information from these meetings. So it's super important to not fall into sales leader deficit disorder here. If you have experienced sales leader deficit disorder as a rep watching this, or while you were a rep and you're a sales leader watching this, I am super excited to hear you say, yep, been there, done that. Personally, yep, been there, done that, and been a victim of sales leader deficit disorder before. Okay, but it's really important to ensure that we're getting sales rep buy-in in doing this, because we all know that when we have buy-in from our team members, they are so much more likely to participate and to take this and make it their own. So my best suggestion is, in preparation to setting up any of these meetings and within your operating cadence, whether you recognize that a forecast meeting is the #1 meeting that is going to help you waterfall the rest of your sales process right now, leaving this session, what is a great idea would be to set up your first meeting, call it forecast meeting with your team, and ask your reps to walk you through their current process. Acknowledge the current process that they run through, just to listen to it. Ask them for gaps that they see or areas of opportunities that they see within their current process. Get their perspective on literally what they believe they could be doing better at and where they need help. Agree with them upon how you plan to modify this new process into your stage advancement criteria, into your sales methodology, into whatever it is that you're trying to make a change in. For example, for pipeline health, we're leaving a meeting, our first meeting, where we are getting buy-in, and I'm saying to my rep, all right, Maggie, do we agree that our area of focus is going to be getting opportunities from our lead stage into our S1 stage faster? Yes, I agree. So we always want to make sure we're leaving an agreement. The second to last piece would be involve others. Get your team together after you've had your one-on-ones around specific meetings in your operating cadence and talk through what's working and what's not, and then set up a true action plan. Another way to actually involve others would be talk me through, Maggie, how you're leveraging your business development representative to help you with developing pipeline and ensuring that you're getting quality leads that are qualified. So we, of course, want to make sure that our reps are bought into the strategy and the progress of our sessions. All right, so how can we effectively coach? Now, one of the ways that I've learned to effectively coach that I've actually found is the most impactful that I've tried out so far is by the Socratic method. And the Socratic method runs by saying, well, really the concept of the Socratic method is we're not necessarily looking for the right or wrong answer. So when we ask questions in any one of these meetings within our operating cadence, I'll keep on the path of the pipeline meeting. We're not asking for our reps to understand and say yes or no to any of the questions that we ask. What we are trying to probe out is how do they think about it today? What's their perspective on the world of pipeline? And therefore, how do they act upon the ways that they believe? This will give us a couple of things. First, it helps our reps to actually work through whatever their perspective is, rather than coming to you consistently and asking you questions about what is right or wrong. What are the right or wrong ways to do things? So it's truly helping them go through the learning process within their own mind. The second is it helps us identify our areas of gap that we can then go and coach to. Maybe it is, I think about pursuit nurture in this specific way, and I think pursuit nurtures can sit in that stage for a whole year. And maybe that's not your process. Maybe you only want pursuit nurtures to sit in that stage for 60 days. So how are you going to start to maneuver and express to your sales rep why that might not be, why their plan might not be as successful? And it allows you to leverage your sales enablement team, should you have one, for areas of opportunity that you might be able to tune in on. So always use your sales enablement team, if that's of access to you, to help with leading these types of coaching sessions. Whenever we're asking these types of Socratic questions, we want to be asking them in a super broad and very generic way. Again, we're trying to understand how our people think. So therefore, how do they act? And really, the whole point of the Socratic method is listening actively and following your line of questions by doing so. For example, if I'm sitting with Maggie in a pipeline session and I'm asking her, where is most of your pipeline currently coming from? And she says, I don't know. Well, Maggie, can you talk to me about why you don't know? Can you talk to me about the specific reports that you use to track your pipeline? Can you walk me through your relationship with your business development representative so that I can understand a little bit better why this might be a disconnect? Or if I ask Maggie the question, talk to me about the composition of your pipeline. What types of opportunities tend to fill it? And she says, well, a majority of my pipeline are deals like XYZ company, and usually I'm really struggling with those because they only have a $5,000 ARR. I'm probably talking to Maggie about, one, who is she going after in her own prospecting time? And secondarily, how is her strategy? What is her strategy with her business development representative to ensure that she's getting quality pipeline from the larger organizations that will have more of the whale average deal size dollar amount associated? So the real point of this section is to give you some examples of great questions that you can use in these sessions, and then following this up with, okay, now that you've walked me through areas of opportunity that you clearly have, I want you to talk to me about areas that you are going to hone in on and execute upon before our next section, or our next session in a couple of weeks. This is not to say that in using the Socratic method, you can't also give advice or coaching tips. For example, hey Maggie, I might suggest that you sit with your business development representative and walk through a strategy of who it is that you're targeting. Are these real ideal customer profile accounts, or are they lower grade and maybe not as good for your continued pipeline maintenance? All right, today we have talked through a lot with operating cadence. And of course, when you start getting into conversations around the operating cadence, it can seem like this massive ocean to boil, when in reality, what we need to do is get focused, prioritize, and make sure that we have a purpose and intention set so that we can impactfully and effectively coach our team members. If you want to learn any more about how personally I look at my operating cadence, the ways that I help my team members coach, and maybe some ideas on best practices for your Socratic method as you're beginning to hone that in, feel free to reach out to me at maggie.callahan@conversant.com. I am very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. But I'll also be here for the remainder of the Sales Enablement Soiree to answer any questions you might have. Thank you all so much for joining, and I will see you on the flip side.